let's get into it. This is the debate. Star Trek versus Star Wars, which is better, which is deader? I want to know, I think there are two aspects to this debate currently. One is the better franchise. And we've got a vote that we're running right now, a poll. We will reveal the results of the poll. You can pick Star Trek, you can pick Star Wars, or you can pick I love them both. Now, here's what we're going to do. If you pick I love them both, which you are perfectly fine in doing, that's okay. You can love them both. I'm probably leaning more towards that camp, but we're going to take the results of Star Trek and Star Wars, and that will decide it. That is going to decide it. But I think what you've got to look at is like the history of the franchise, right? I mean, Star Wars started 11 years after the original Star Trek series in 1966, rolled out to the public. 11 years later, the first Star Wars movie came out and changed the game. There's actually a very famous photograph of George Lucas meeting Gene Roddenberry. You need to find that photo. I believe they only met once. And there's so many similarities between the two men, George Lucas and Gene Roddenberry. They're both kind of shepherds of their franchise. They were both very controlling, and I think a very good way, for good reasons. We've seen what happens when a franchise goes off the rails. Okay. And then with Gene Roddenberry, he had a different story. The franchise kind of got away from him, and he was sidelined, and was always kind of there waiting in the wings, just like, oh, this would never happen, or Captain Kirk would never do this. And he had very specific things that he wanted to see happen, in the series. He was involved in the very first, there it is. So you got to zoom in on that. That's great. Zoom in on that pic. I love it. Yeah. Yep. George Lucas meeting Gene Roddenberry. That had to be, it looks like the 90s. Or maybe 80s.
Had to be early 80s.
Early 80s.
Yeah. That's kind of the George's in kind of that Saturday Night Fever kind of suit.
I love it. Yeah, so that's the 80s. Cool. But when you look at Star Trek, there have been hundreds of hours of stories being told, hundreds of hours over the course of decades in multiple series, each for the most part focused on starships, particular starships, and a different group of characters. Star Wars is a film series that is only now getting into television with, let's be honest, mixed results. So you can look at which is the better series over the course of time. You can also look at which series has fallen on harder times. For my money, this is one of those impossible questions for someone who grew up watching Star Trek with my dad. My father was really into NASA, anything involving space travel. He loved it. We would watch episodes of Star Trek and then have in-depth discussions after with the questions that Star Trek brought up through so many different episodes that were, had lessons. I never felt preached to by Star Trek. I always felt like it gave you fodder for thought. Star Wars was certainly perhaps the more fun, a large universe to play in, probably the less scientifically. Science isn't like a big part of Star Wars. Let's be fair. Star Wars is more of a fairy tale, more of an adventure story. Mm-hmm. Some of the best episodes of Star Trek, they don't leave the ship. This current season of Picard, season 3, it's kind of a bottle episode. They don't leave the ship that much. They go on to other ships. They go to other places, but they haven't thus far been to another planet per se.
Yeah. Well, the series is more like the movies, the Star Trek movies, than it is the television show.
And you know what? I'm loving it. Yeah. So what is the franchise that is better currently? I'm going to say Star Trek is in better shape. Mm-hmm. If it's possible for them to continue in this direction. I really, I don't know. I would be stoked if there was something that was more in the vein of Picard. Who knows
Yeah.
though? It may be too late. Meaning, like whatever data they're collecting, which is what watched hours, right?
Mhm.
Are people, have they seen an uptick with season 3 of Picard? Usually people kind of trail off. I don't know. Will we ever know? I don't know, because I don't even believe the numbers that the streaming services present themselves.
Well, let's put it this way. If we take the best of new Star Wars and the best of new Star Trek, so Picard and Andor, Picard clearly wins it. It is, I mean, it's Andor had its Andor as, I liked it. I think it's sad that it's the best. It shouldn't be the best. It should be in the middle somewhere, but that shows you the state of the overall franchise. And there's still problems with it. I think, we talked about how Andor tends, the cuts from episode to episode are uneven. They don't excite people. There are some great moments in it, but there are a lot of dull moments, or a lot of moments that should have been better that weren't. Picard just hits every single episode.
Right. Yeah, it's also does a thing that I think good television should do, which is you're left like, what happens in the next episode? Now that
Mhm.
wouldn't happen always with every episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
No, Star Trek were capsule episodes. They were basically, they went to a planet, they learned something about humanity and themselves, and then they went to the next planet. The idea of episodic Star Trek didn't occur until the end of the season, leading into the next season. That's the only time you really, you had part ones and part twos in Star Trek. So you go watch Star Trek in any order, and it doesn't matter when you pop in or pop out.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's look, what this show is. This show, Picard season 3, every episode is a cliffhanger. Every episode leaves a piece of unfinished business to get you to watch the next episode. So here's the statistic I think that you need to look at, which is retention, right? I mean, I checked
Mhm.
out the first episode of the first season of Picard. I love the character. I was not hooked. I think I maybe checked in on a second or third episode, and then I dropped off. Not gonna lie, I dropped off and I
Mhm.
didn't care.
Yeah, that's
So,
kind of how I was with it. Also with Mandalorian season 1.
you know what I never missed though? I never missed an episode of Red Letter Media reviewing Star Trek Picard, because their insight was so much more entertaining than the actual show. It was hysterical. So yeah, but yeah, I checked out. So how do you retain an audience? Well, with the single thing in storytelling that every story, all storytelling comes down to one thing. I want to know what happens next.
Mhm.
I'm so engaged. I want to know what happens next. And Picard season 3 has done this. Picard season 3 has hooked the audience in a way, at least for me, and for those watching. And I want to hear your comments on Picard season 3. Are you hooked? And I do, you know, I don't think that the Mandalorian's been doing that.
Mm-mm.
Alan, are you caught up on Picard, and what are your thoughts?
I am not caught up on Picard. I thought I had till Friday to do it, uh,
Right.
but again, it is great. This is the best for me, for my world of television. It's the best thing on television at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's very small. I'm a movie person, so that's where most of my time is spent. But
Sorry, I have
yeah,
people.
I mean, it's
Yes.
such the blend of nostalgia with new storytelling is I think what excites me most about Picard. The heart, just to see Odo in even the picture when they're talking about the foundlings was awesome to me.
Yep. All right. Well, look, what?
I know. I say something and you're like, "Yep."
I was listening the whole time.
I know. Okay,
What were the
so
final
let's just
results?
say Star Trek 1 at 69%.
Get
Literally, it was 69%.
Was it for
We're
real?
not making we're not making that up at all.
Wait, we need a clean cut
Star
of
Wars
you.
was at 17,
Oh
and
my
then
God.
yeah, and whatever was left
Was the
is
I love them both.
yeah.
Wow. Well, it just goes to show you get one good series. You know, it's like, look,
Mhm.
Star Wars is one good. I can't believe it was 69%. Oh my God, Alan. That's hilarious. Oh my God. But well, it just goes to show. It just goes to show all you need, like Star Wars is one good movie away from everyone being, because I think fandom is very forgiving. Fandom is very forgiving, you know?
Yeah.
So, and apparently there are literally, and we'll talk about this on another stream, 12 announced Star Wars projects that aren't happening. Can you believe that?
I can't be only in the sense of, it surprises me that they gave up on it, or that maybe someone has some some wisdom over at Lucasfilm and knows that they just can't keep going the way they are. That there's no money to be made.